Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Right Time, a Wave original. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Subscribe, like, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars. I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. All right, we are trying something new here. We are going to do a series for the year 1996 in rap for 2026. You can do a little bit of math, 30 years, celebration of sorts. Got a lot of episodes planned out, ideas. It's going to be a little different than last time. When we did 1994, we went through specific albums. When we're going to do 1996, we're going to talk about like more albums, but also just kind of where we were at the time. So a little bit more of a study than just a rundown. But it dawned on me while doing this. We always talk about 1994. We always talk about 96. In between, quietly, is the banging year of 1995. So to join us for the episode of Running Through 1995, I should have asked how to introduce him before we got here, but he is a brilliant critic of culture. If nothing else, some of the other stuff, I'm not sure legally how much I can say, but Jason England coming to us live from Pittsburgh. What's going on, man?
What's going on? I got my Pittsburgh Pirates jersey, Sean Price, Wu-Tang Clan in theme for 1995. Pleasure to be here. You know, cultural critic, I guess. A writer, generally a former college professor of, I think, about 15 years, and you know, happy to be kicking it about rap with you.
No, you actually go to those Pirates games. That's the thing to be very clear
absolutely.
about. This is not just simply
one of the best
jersey.
there is in America. Yeah, you don't even have to watch the game.
No, but it's I have this thing now where I'm getting to that age, and because of like the inclinations and shall we say the eclecticness of my taste, like the way black people feel when they see white people wearing them like NWA t-shirts and stuff like that, I kind of feel that way when I see somebody on the train down 125th Street with a Pink Floyd t-shirt on. You don't know nothing about no Pink Floyd. Like, but it's the opposite of the way that black people typically say that. But no, you are not doing that with your baseball jersey. You really be out there watching them lose.
Yeah, I do. I mean, born and raised a Yankees fan. Don Mattingly was white Jesus for me. But I always had a soft spot for the Pirates. I was a big fan of baseball history. Bill Mazeroski, you know, those Willie Stargell teams, the We Are Family teams. But that was the last time that they were really relevant. So you go for the good seats and the view of the city, and you go for the right field bar. You want to talk to my homegirl up there, Mel. She'll get you right.
Also, no, they were relevant when the Braves were beating them in the playoffs. That was my favorite era of the Pirates. I love that.
Dan Slike and Barry Bonds and Terry Pendleton years.
That's right. That's right.
And
I did like a Sporkle quiz. The Pirates, I mean, this will change with the LSU cat, but they have not had a Cy Young Award winner since Doug Drabeck in 1990. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Everybody's done something since then. But the year in rap 1995, you and I come from this from similar but different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
I was growing up in Houston. You were in New York. Two places that are fairly insular about their hip hop, but we were two people that were inclined to kind of branch out and get into more. But I do say, looking back on it, the insularity is not necessarily the bad thing that could often feel like at the time, because what we're talking about, especially for people younger who can't quite catch this is the mid-90s is when we're starting to see this dwindle a bit, but we're still squarely in a very regional era of what rap was. And I don't mean that, yes, in a way it was provincial, but in a lot of ways that was very, very good because we had very distinct scenes in different cities, like scenes within cities, but also just very distinct scenes across the country that every now and then overlap. But there was something kind of charming about the fact that the lines were drawn a little bit more clearly.
Yeah, I think there was less of a flattening of I guess the personality and the slang in hip hop, and the other thing was I think there was more of a charm to hearing things from outside of hip hop, and people were emceeing as an art. And that's something I went back and I listened to maybe 2-3 hours of music, you know, just to get refamiliarized. And I felt like I was back being in my teens and early 20s again, man. It was beautiful. But something that was very distinctive was the creativity. And there's something about rappers. I don't want to go too far back and say in the last 20 years, but certainly in the last 5 to 10, where they had this feel about them, like people who describe themselves as creatives. You know, I don't really know if you have a talent for any craft or a mastery of any craft. You just kind of have this catch-all phrase that you're an MC, and it means something very different now. So it was really refreshing to go back and listen to like an Andre 3000 or a CeeLo for the first time when they just blew my mind, right? Or the Wu-Tang when they came. You talk about regional. New York itself was regional within New York. You know, it's like
right.
Brooklyn, versus, well, not Harlem. We barely ever produced any MCs out there.
It is inexplicable how that turns out to be the case.
But yeah, Brooklyn and Queens, and then suddenly you have these people coming in from Staten Island that, as they said in Succession, you might as well be busting in from Cleveland at that point, right? And you have one of the greatest groups of all time emerge from there, and that was fascinating. Very refreshing.
And I do think that we can say this off the top, and I understand why these things offend younger people when they hear it. But the truth is, they was rapping better back then. There's kind of no way around it, in part because you had the technology, or lack thereof in some ways, almost made it such that you had to be rapping better back then. Like, to do this or want to do it, you also had to love it in a different way because the promise of a payday did not exist, or the dream of it rather than the promise did not exist in the same way. And when you go back and listen, it is a far more literate music, I would say. And it is definitely, like you said, a different era of creativity.
Yeah, and there's a love of it culturally that stems from it being a local culture, right? People are breakdancing and beatboxing before they started pretending that Lin-Manuel invented these things and his ilk, right? Everyone was doing this. So my friend Shaka King, director who did, why am I forgetting his movie?
Jews and the Black Messiah.
Yes, exactly. He tells this great story about when him and our friend Justin would go to Knitting Factory in Wetlands, and the Roots would just rock. They would do these jam sessions for like an hour or two. And this rapper from Brooklyn, Half a Mill, would show up. Like a street dude would be there just in there proving his skills. This was like, you might be a drug dealer, you might be a thug in people's eyes, but you came there to be an artist. And that was very different back then. And it was in a way that I did not appreciate until, 10 years later, 15 years later.
And specific to what you're referring to, because all you guys are from New York, and I do think there's something interesting about the fact in that time, and I don't know if you could fully pick up on it while growing up there, but by this time you would begin to move out in the world a little bit. New York itself was a character in rap. Like what New York meant to rap, it's not just simply, it's the birthplace of rap. By now, okay, California has established itself. The South is beginning to rise, and it really, really gets going in 96 like that. But going back at this time and thinking about just some of the records that came out of New York in 1995, right? Like we start the year with The Shining, Smith & Wesson. You get the infamous from Mobb Deep a little bit later. 3 Wu-Tang albums, and we'll get more into that. Like the gritty, grimy New York sound. We got AZ Do or Die comes out this year. KRS-One puts out the album that's got MCs acting like they don't know and others on it. Like New York is still in 1995 a clear titan in rap. But what is interesting really going back on it is the idea that, this is also music that is very clearly made for New York. They ain't really tripping too hard on what nobody else is doing.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. And I think that when you look in retrospect, some of what I couldn't see at the time was how little that would matter to everyone else. So The Shining you bring up, it's just a classic album in New York. And Smith & Wesson, I mean, there were probably 5 singles off that ran the streets. Soundboy Burial is one of the greatest New York anthems ever in terms of just capturing the feeling of the city at that time. Back then, people were debating whether or not Boot Camp Clip or Wu-Tang was the better crew. I mean, there was a real argument that Black Moon's Into the Stage was as good of an album as Wu-Tang, Into the 36 Chambers, right? Now, in retrospect, it's a laughable concept. And that was kind of because we had, my friend talks about people on the West Coast having West Coast ears and their love for certain things like DJ Quick to an extreme that people in New York never could have. But we had East Coast ears. We loved Boot Camp in a way that the rest of the country never could. They could never understand why we heard them that way. I mean, we even loved, some of us, Tim Dog in a way that certainly no one with any other kind of ears could ever feel.
Right.
Feel that way. So, I do understand that much better now, and I could understand it a bit back then.
But I think it's interesting, though, that because of, New York still was the center of the media world, and specifically the center of the media world in rap. So they're really, until Vibe comes out, and I want to say Vibe comes out around like 94, 95 in that space, but the source was the Bible for all of these things. And the source was guidance in terms of what was or was not supposed to be dope. It was kind of the source, Yo MTV Raps and Rap City. We're kind of beaming in for you. And so we got these insights on these things. And so in the South, especially for the places in the South that rap did not catch on immediately, like rap caught on immediately in New Orleans, it caught on immediately in Atlanta. I would argue in Houston, rap did not catch on immediately in that way. Once Houston got its own rap scene, people in Houston got into that. Now, there were some of us that were a bit on our own kick and we were there for what the New York rap was. And so amongst our crews, like Smith and Wesson was still going, right? They were still hitting. You were interesting because you were in New York and you actually were able to get an ability to appreciate and feel the rap, especially that was coming out of the South and starting to rise in this time.
Yeah, I went down to North Carolina and I linked up with my homie James, RIP. James drove a lowrider Ford EXP, and he was blasting Compton's Most Wanted, and he was blasting Outkast's first album. And I had all the tapes he had never heard. I had the Diamond D tape Blue was mine. I remember that. He was like, "What the hell is this?" I had Biggie before it came out because my cousin was a sound engineer. He had an early copy of it. And I'm sitting there. It reminds me of my close friend, my point guard in high school. He went to Santa Clara. I was down in North Carolina. And I told him I had run a scrimmage with Vince Carter. And he told me he had run a scrimmage with the best guard he had ever met. I'm like, well, who the hell is this at Santa Clara? I'm telling you about a guy named Vince Carter in North Carolina. And he was telling me about Steve Nash. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was like, who cares about Steve Nash? And, and this was how it was with James. It's like, I thought I had all of the tapes. And then James plays me the Outkast. And I'm like, whoa. And then my other friend plays me the 8-Ball and MJG. And that was back when we looked at the source and it was like, who's the fat dude on this ad, looking ridiculous, leaning against the car. And I was like, oh, he's nice. And his partner, MJG, might be nicer than all the New York rappers that I love. Like to this day, I still argue with people from New York. I'm like, man, y'all slept on MJG. Dude was nice. And that expanded my mind for sure. But I was always very open-minded, and I hate groupthink. I grew up in New York, never rooting for the local teams except the Yankees, and that was only because I read a history book about them when I was young. I'm always trying to expand my horizons. So it's a beautiful thing to watch, these rap groups coming up.
And I think that 95 in rap out of New York really is defined by two things. Queens, Mobb Deep, The Infamous, and the 3 Wu albums that come out that year. Old Dirty Bastard, Return to the 36 Chambers, Only Built for Cuban Links from Raekwon, and then to close out the year, Liquid Swords with the Jizza. And so there's something to be said about the fact that the defining music of that time was so gully and so hardcore. But for those who were not there, I don't know how possible it is to explain what a big fucking deal the infamous Mobb Deep record was.
Yeah. Well, first of all, sonically, it stands up, right? At the time, I'd never heard anything like it. We're all just coming out of this stupendous hangover of Illmatic, thinking that was the best thing anybody ever heard in New York. And the Infamous drops from the same exact neighborhood. And it's like, I don't want to say this sounds better because that seems blasphemous, but this is kind of sound better. And you got Q-Tip with his fingerprints and his DNA all over it. I think Mobb Deep was saying that one of the things that Tip had a gift for is he could make a record sound huge. He just had a way sonically with drums and texture where suddenly your music, the beat you made just sounded much bigger, like it should be in a club, in a stadium. And every song sounded like that. And Prodigy was just a genius rapper. And I think over the years, he's been acquitted. I think a lot of people just thought about him making these hardcore raps and like he was kind of like pretty good. No, man, he was singularly talented. His influence is all over MCs. Clips is not my favorite group, but every group like Clips will tell you, like, hey, Prodigy was an MC who inspired me, right? So you have this incredible rapping over great sonics, and then you go over to the RZA side of things, and I'm not sure that New York's ever had a more brilliant producer. I say it as someone who loves other producers more. I love Prime Premier. I love Madlib. I'm not saying he's from New York, but those are my favorite producers. I think Q-Tip's a singular genius in hip-hop history, but I don't know anyone did what RZA did. When you hear RZA's beat flips on Liquid Swords, on Only Built for Cuban Links, and you find the sample sources, you still don't understand how he made the beat. And to me, that's the mark of a great producer. That's a visionary. Like it's like, wait, you took that sample and you did what with it? I still have no idea how you came up with that beat. Living in the World Today, off GZA's album, is one that comes to mind. Criminology comes to mind. Yeah. I don't know if that's a lot of drugs. I don't know if it's a lot of vision. I don't know if it's too many Kung Fu movies, but I still have never heard soundscapes like the ones he created. And they did blow my mind. And no one was ready. The underground was not ready for that. A lot of people have this historical revision that everyone thought these albums were classic. I remember listening to Stretch and Bobbito religiously, and when Only Built for Cuban Links came out, they thought it sounded good, and they were very thrown off by the lyrical content and didn't like it all that much. It took them a while to warm up, but that thing was just so overpowering as an album. It was so dope and so raw and so new. It sounded like it was from outer space, and it just took over. There was no stopping it on the underground. It set a new standard for rap. It totally changed New York rap.
Now, one thing I'll say real quick, we don't have to belabor, is that the technology and the means of distribution at the time made it much easier for something to be something that you could warm up to, right? Like, you were not required to like it immediately or otherwise that you moved on, because you paid $17 or however much it costs you to get that tape. I'm going to find out if I like it. Now, with the Mobb Deep, to me, both with the sound and the lyrics, it was so evocative, right? And it was so easy in a lot of ways to picture what they were talking about, to the point where people were shocked to find out not only were these guys like 5 feet tall, they were also like 18, if you didn't know that part already, right? Because, and this is something that's interesting also, you don't really get that many 18, 19-year-olds that get to that space, as they had with that record. But especially after I moved here, somebody told me, I think it was Elena Bergeron who told me, who was like, hey, man, you're going to have one of these cold, wet, rainy days that you got to walk through to get to the train no matter what. Throw that Mobb Deep on then. And if it didn't make sense to you before, it will now, right? And so now the Queensbridge projects, the largest projects in the United States, it should be noted, are kind of an epicenter of where rap has gone. Illmatic has come out in 94. Nas is on this record. It's kind of the Queen, I don't want to say the Queen's resurrection, because it's not like they just completely went away, but you're right. Q-Tip, who always had, you made this point to me that I didn't realize, Q-Tip got more street respect than one might have thought, given what the type of music was that they were doing, even with that music. So now he's coming in and putting these grimy beats on top of it, plus Havoc himself is making this thing bang. And then you look up and it's like, oh, okay, like it's as New York in a good way as any record had ever been. Then you go to Staten Island, and what I thought about the RZA was also similarly evocative, except I felt like Mobb Deep was painting a picture for a world that clearly existed, and you knew what it was. I don't know what the hell is going on with these cats, but I can see it.
Yeah, I think about this quite often. I think about the Brooklyn Zoo video. I didn't know what was happening, and I'm from New York. And not only am I from New York, but my entire family, in projects across from Fort Greene to Harlem. Project Staircase and Hallways, not new to me. But when I saw ODB and Method Man in the staircase in that video, I said, these people are just on something else, man. I do not understand the vision, but I know when I'm seeing something genius and that I should keep watching and keep listening. But I always thought ODB, in the strangest way, was a yin and yang sort of person with Tupac. They have very similar spirits to me. They were absolute superstars, irrepressible charisma. You never knew what they were going to do or who they were going to pop up around. Now, he was a more derelict version, absolutely.
Right.
But his spirit, I was in awe of it from the moment I saw him. I've never seen such an obvious superstar who looks nothing like a superstar in the standard measurement of it. Like, I mean, that whole crew, they burned bright from the beginning. New York had this thing where people would talk about the coolest guy in New York rap every year. And it was weird people sometimes. Like Grand Puba was absolutely the coolest guy in New York rap for us. Jay-Z was. The Wu had like 3 of them, man. Like they had Method Man, who was for Ghostface, absolutely was. And in his own way, you can argue that ODB was. And that's incredible for one group to have. And we're not even getting to Jizza, RZA, or Raekwon when we're talking about that, right? Like, that's the coolest group to ever come out of New York, man.
Yeah, Purple Tape, because Purple Tape drops that summer. And I remember when it came out, and like, I'm in Houston, man, so this is a different world. Like, we were into the Wu, but that was the first one for real for me out of the solos where I was like, oh, hey, because you got to think about it. The Meth solo record was disappointing. I think it's fair to, there are explanations for why it was, but it was disappointing. The ODB one is still a little bit out there. The Purple Tape is like, hey, man, there's never been anything like this before, in a way that it took me many years to understand, because I didn't quite, I'm 15 years old or 14. I only know but so much about selling dope, right? And they're talking about selling dope in a way that is way different than anything I ever could have imagined at that point in my life.
And also mixing in the 5% slang. It's almost like a carryover from like the brand Nubian era. and then wedding it to this sort of emerging mafioso drug dealer era. So it was like knowledge of self and selling dope at the same time. And it's a hell of a thing to sit up on here and talk about this critically and celebrate selling dope. But
Right.
you know what? Sometimes rapping about selling dope sounds good. And a
Right.
lot of
Hey,
people are
man. And
living that
look,
way.
rap was better with crackpot religion, man. I always say, like, once, because if nothing else, no matter what the religion was, there was a spiritual basis behind it. And I think we've all acknowledged, even I, as a non-religious, wouldn't call myself a spiritual person. The music's better when it's got that feeling, regardless of where it comes from. And rap was always buoyed by that, right? In part because, and you can't really know this till you get to New York, but like you walk in Harlem north of 125th Street and just start looking at what some of the buildings are,
Yeah,
man, it's all kinds of crackpot religion going on. The doors is still open.
yeah.
Them cats is still in there getting the knowledge and the mathematics. I don't know why they don't rap no more, but it really added a texture to the music that was coming out from there that hasn't been replaced since this era.
Yeah, my uncle was FOI, and my uncle was also a drug enforcer. That marriage always existed in that religion. You said something else I want to touch on real quick because I think it's so fascinating. Uh, Obviously, people who collect vinyl are purists in their own way. For some reason, I always thought the tape for me was the best form of music because of what you said. The Walkman I had, maybe I just didn't have enough money to have the real nice ones because it wasn't worth fast forwarding. So you had to sit with the entire album. And sitting with an entire album is a lot like how you become a real good intellectual, because over time and with patience and understanding, you learn what the good songs are. The CD is the first step away from it and toward this sort of AI automated sound where it's like, I only want to hear this saccharine song. I want to hear the song everybody else likes. You never spend the time. It's almost like people's taste in celebrity women. It's like everyone thinks this person is attractive and they look airbrushed. When you sit with a person for weeks and months in conversation, you learn what makes a person attractive and beautiful. And you're able to set your own taste, your own standard for beauty, your own standard for what's dope. And when that went away, I think a lot of the culture and the discourse went away. And I hated it.
Now, we're talking about this in the context of New York, and you touched on this very quickly, but um, Tupac's Me Against the World comes out in 1995, which is in part the calm before the storm, but also in part the storm before the storm, right? Like there are these moments where he has this kind of like lucidity and clarity. And, this is Tupac going into jail.
Yeah.
And so this is also Tupac giving you Dear Mama and kind of giving you that vibes while also giving you Fuck the World and raging through the record. But it is the record that sets up the rest of the decade, right?
Yeah.
The timeline of rap is established, or this is a clear inflection point about where things are going, but in a way that none of us could have possibly known or understood when it came out.
Yeah. Yeah. You could do a whole podcast on that album. Well, I don't even know where to start with that one. That's more than listening to Outkast. It was Pac who changed how I received the music. Um, you have to understand Harlem actually was a hub for Tupac. He hung out there a lot. I saw him at the bodega on 126 in Lexington, hanging out front because the woman he married and then had later had the wedding, the marriage annulled. I'm sorry, when he was in prison, she lived half a block down from me, so he was there a lot. Ra Ra, who was on Me Against the World, is from Harlem. I used to see him out there, right, by the Jackie Robinson projects. So Harlem already had love for Pac, and I think a lot of people thought New York didn't like Tupac, which was not true, at least not where I was. But on top of that, he was the first person for me personally, and I think some people argue Scarface went there too, but for me, it was Pac who did this sort of emotional blues, paranoia, desperation rap that spoke to me for a lot of reasons. One, I was about to drop out of college because I didn't have enough money and I had responsibilities. My cousin had just gone to jail for cocaine possession. He was my brother. I grew up with him. And my best friend had gotten shot and killed. And I needed someone who spoke to trauma. It spoke to the way I grew up and the emotions I was running through. And that wasn't in the sort of lyrical rap, right, where people were trying to outdo each other with turns of phrase. And I think Pac showed me a new way to rap. It was like, oh, you don't just have to write, quadruple entendres to get a point across, right? There's a raw emotional way to do it. And that set me up for the rest of my life in terms of the rap that I like going forward, that you can tap into that. So I just thought that album was phenomenal.
Yeah, emotion as a device. Like this is the one where he talks about Biggie stole my album for his album. Of course, that is probably exaggerated, but you can hear and understand in Me Against the World what he's talking about because it's really thematic.
Yeah.
And the idea that you were talking about your pain and your depression in your life and all of these things. And this record also makes it interesting is it's a New York-ish record, right? Like it's still very much like, you got Shock G beats on there. You got like the Johnny J stuff, but you also got the Easy Mo B joints. And he clearly did like this record was done in large part also in New York City. And of course, this is the setup, right? This one comes out while he's in jail and he is stewing and has convinced himself that Biggie Smalls and Puffy had him shot. And then everything rages after that. But this also, and I feel like in some ways, this puts a cap to a big theme in the early 90s. And what you just talked about is the trauma of a crazy murder rate that was the early 90s. Like something I didn't really grasp in the time because my life was fairly charmed. But like, remember the "This Is For My Homies" and the "Gangsta Lean" song, and like there were a lot of funeral dirges and just songs about people dying at the time because so many people were getting murdered at that point. This is the era of the crime bill that everybody talks about and all of that stuff. And Pac is kind of the culmination of this post-civil rights movement, like the cats that grew up in that revolution and the disappointment that come after that. And then you get to this record and you're just like, oh, okay. This is it all coming together and all that pain as he's headed into jail, which had to be highly disappointing on a number of levels. This is all it right here.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we talked about branching out too, going out to North Carolina where my friend was murdered, he was in Winston-Salem. I went to Winston-Salem and that woke me up, because it's true, because of media and the representations in New York, a lot of people growing up thinking, well, this is where the hood is. It's here in Compton, right? This sort of ignorance. And I went to Winston-Salem. The murder rate was the highest it was in the nation at the time. And I went around the projects there and I thought, take me back to the projects in New York immediately. This is terrible, right? And that kind of gave me this feeling that presaged a group like Bone Thugs too, where it was like, yo, all over this country, people are dealing with the trauma. And there's a reason these dirges exist, because the entire nation has these pockets where these Black people are in the grips of this trauma, and the music is going to emerge from there, speaking to this pain and speaking about this pain. And I think that's what we saw starting to happen in '95 for sure.
And it's interesting because you fast forward 20 years from that and think about stuff like what was going on when we were in the streets about the police killing us and everything else, and there was still no soundtrack to it. Never, nobody got around to going in the booth and doing something about it. And it makes you ask yourself why. But coming up next, we got a lot more 1995 rap coming up on The Right Time. What if you could consistently find whatever it is you're looking for right away? We're talking everything from parking spots to holiday gifts to jackets or jeans that fit perfectly. Imagine how much time you'd save. While you may never instantly find these things, if you're hiring, you can find qualified candidates right away, time and time again with ZipRecruiter. And today, you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/Bomani. ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology works fast to find top talent. With ZipRecruiter's advanced resume database, you can unlock top candidates' contact info instantly. Want to know right away how many qualified candidates are in your area? Look no further than ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And right now, you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/Bomani. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/Bomani. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Let's be honest. It's hard to stay healthy during the holiday season. Crowded airports and travel cause strain on our systems. Darkness and shorter days may throw off your rhythm, and holiday meals mean getting lost in sweets and snacking. That's where AG1 comes in. But what is AG1? AG1 Next Gen is a daily health drink clinically shown to support gut health and fill in common nutrient gaps. 1 scoop in the morning with 8 to 12 ounces of cold water adds up to whole body health support from 75 plus vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and whole food sources ingredients. AG1 isn't just another supplement. It's a daily micro habit that supports whole body health in 1 scoop. Here's how to make it yours. Head to drinkag1.com/Bomani to get a free welcome kit with an AG1 flavor sampler and a bottle of vitamin D3 plus K2 when you first subscribe. That's drinkag1.com/Bomani. All right, back with Jason England talking about the year in rap 1995. It's really fun to kind of just go through and look at how many albums were just absolute classics. But the other thing is, there are records that, like Master Ace sitting on Chrome, for example, which was always this interesting construction because the New York rapper who did not sound like he was making New York rap at all, right? It felt like at that time where I was going through the list of albums that came out that year, and it would just be sprinklings of cats. It was like, oh yeah, Nine Lives, the other dude from Staten Island that was making records. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about Nine.
Yeah.
But there would always be these records that might be your joint, not everybody's joint, but would be your joint. AZ Do or Die is a record that comes out that year. But in terms of the big ones, you touched on this right before we went to break, which was the Bone Thugs, who the year before had come out with Creeping on to Come Up with Thuggish Ruggish Bone, For the Love of Money, and they changed the game. It's kind of hard to dispute, and it was also very difficult to get a handle for a lot of people as to whether or not they liked that. I was in Houston. They could not get enough of a melodic rap group, right? They were the ones. But 95 is when East 1999 Eternal comes out. It was everywhere. Like, I don't really have a great handle on how we talk about the Bone Thugs in the future that has emerged since then. But where I was, it got no bigger than the Bone Thugs.
Yeah. I don't think it was that big in New York, but I also wasn't exclusively in New York at that point. So I was getting it from different places. I would bring music back to people I knew in New York, and they still weren't hearing all of it like that. And Bone Thugs had this, a lot of people I knew in New York called it group home rap. It was like, this is ironically, they liked the group home, but they were talking about kids who lived in group homes. They were like, that's the kind of kids who listen to us. What I heard with Bone was bizarre and off-putting. And I listened to it enough that I started to love it. But I thought the album was incredibly uneven. Like, I didn't think it was a great album. I thought it was a great breakthrough style. And the evidence of that has been vindicated, right? Like that album's been vindicated because everyone rapped like Bone Thugs emerging out of it. Everyone was doing double and triple time flows. Everyone was trying to harmonize. I mean, Lord, the whole game is about harmony now, right? I think they're a fascinating group. And you look back on them and they are the weirdest geniuses that rap has produced, maybe. Like, half of them are these like mulattoes from Cleveland. They're doing barbershop quartet rap. It doesn't seem like it should work whatsoever. And yet here we are all these years later, one of the most successful rap groups in the history of the genre. I mean, they were selling records for, I guess they were flyover state rappers. They united everyone. I found out about them from a woman I was kind of messing with from Pittsburgh, so it was very popular in those places where they did not have a firm rap identity. They were speaking, in some ways, they were group home foster care rappers. They were speaking to the states that were kind of the foster children of hip hop.
The irony of it is 3-6 Mafia got live by your rep, which is called the Bone Diss, because they're like, hey man, these cats is coming down here, or one of them at least is coming down here during the summers, and they bit our whole steez. Now you fast forward 30 years, and the 3-6 Mafia is now treated as the pioneering group of all the things you talked about, the triple time rap and all of that stuff. It went back around in 3-6, which put out a gang of records that year, by the way. Like, if you were around Memphis or somewhere where you could get a hand into some Memphis rap, then you'd get a hold of them. They put out a bunch of records that year, and it was like, oh, these guys say that Bone stole from them. I wonder who they are. Now, they're the ones that get all the credit for it. My thing with Bone at the time, especially with that record, was it was like, hey, man, we ain't need 30 tracks or however long that thing was. It just felt like, it felt like a producer was told that he needed to come up with more beats that he really could come up with, unless you expected some of them to sound the same.
Well, you know how people used to talk about Eminem, and they would say there's a thing that black people can't barely relate to, is that he's dissing his mom. There was a thing like that with Bone, too, where it was like, a thing that the black people I grew up around couldn't relate to. We don't want to hear about no Ouija boys, bro. What is going on this record, Mr. Ouija and all that? This was confusing to me. You talking to Satan over there? What's happening, man? But I got to tell you one off-color story about 3-6 Mafia. I have an ex-girlfriend who's a novelist, and she, at one point, when she sold a book, she moved into this giant house in Cincinnati. It was really nice. If you know Cincinnati, there's really no good neighborhoods in Cincinnati. Everything is touching the hood in some way. And so a bunch of skater punks had lived in this, like 8 of them lived in this house so they could afford it. And I guess the landlord had painted over the wall. And she called me one day and said, you can see this graffiti through the paint. And I said, what does it say? She said, it says, suck a nigga dick or something. The 3-6 legacy lives on.
Well, I also like with 3-6 and Bone being so closely tied. I think an interesting thing about 95 is the building action of Southern rap, right? So we had the Ghetto Boys emerge in the late 80s and early 90s, in large part because they were scared of white people, and we love that, right? Obviously, you get My Mind's Playing Tricks on Me, all-time great single. The Scarface solo career has begun to build. But 95, when you go back and look at some of the records that came out of the South, like, so Bone is starting to get it going. No Limit is really feeling as much like a California outfit still, but like the second Master P album comes out during that year. But you've also got Goody Mob Soul Food comes out that year. A-Ball and MJG on Top of the World. And they've already started, like, with out on the outside looking in, they really already started kicking it in. But that happens. The TRU album that gives us Bout It comes out. So within the South, I told you all those 3-6 records that came out, ESG for the cats in Houston. We're building toward what really gets big in like 97 and 98, even if America didn't realize Mystical, Mind of Mystical, which to me is an unequivocal classic record. That one comes out in 1995. It's all getting there to blow up. And if you didn't have an eye on it, you didn't necessarily know what was going on, but it was happening.
It's interesting because I think what happened for the South, and that's one of my favorite eras from any region, what happens for the South is everything that was used against it. You know, this idea that you got a bunch of country bammers doing bass records. You had a total refutation of that. You just got Andre, and I don't want to short Big Boy at all because I think Big Boy is incredible. But when I heard Andre, I'm like, this is a different level of creativity than I'm used to anywhere, any region. And then you get CeeLo. And you had a taste of CeeLo on the first Outkast album, but now you get him setting this album off, singing and then rapping. And you're like, yo, so this guy can sing his ass off and rap his ass off and sound soulful as hell. And the music, the soundscape was incredible. It was incredible. So everything that had been implied about Southerners being slow, unable to do complicated rapping, and having whack music, it's like, nah. I mean, A-Ball and MJG, that was the thing that stood out to me too. Was it different? Hell yeah. But it was dope. That music was dope. The sound was dope. And then MJG will come and hit you with a verse like he did on Friend or Foe. That blew my mind. That's one of my favorite verses of all time. Like, this is incredible rapping. And so I just had this feeling because I looked back at New York and I saw what was emerging over there. And, you know, the Jiggy area is in full effect, right? And it's like, yo, this shit sounds whack. This sounds like Bama music to me now. This sounds like brilliant music. And that was a stark change for me. It was refreshing and jarring. And man, it gave us some of the best music I ever heard in my life.
And Space Age Pimpin', the rare, absolutely perfect rap song. Like, absolutely, top to bottom. They made the rap slow jam that made no compromise. Like, it's a love song, right? It's a love song coming from different kinds of lovers, but a love song nonetheless. The Mystical record, hey man, when Mystical first dropped, because I don't know what this was like for people in other places. So we in Houston, he's in New Orleans. This is pre-No Limit Mystical. And the joint that dropped was Y'all Ain't Ready Yet. And so I'd never heard anybody who rapped like that, let alone a dude from the South who rapped like that. And he's doing the James Brown up and down and everything else. But it was like, oh, but this dude can rap. And then you got to Here I Go, which got a second life much later from the Kings of Comedy of all places. Boom, whoa, what are we doing here, right? And so I felt like a big part of this was not just the rise of Southern rap, but the South gaining more familiarity with its own rap, with the rap that was going on all over. Because again, the technology is different. The radio game is different. We all kind of had to learn from each other. Like when I talked to my homeboy who's from Mississippi, he makes a very interesting point that being from Mississippi, it was the only place where you got a hand on the Houston, a hand on the Memphis, a hand on New Orleans, and a hand on the Atlanta. Like that place, like if you listen to David Banner's music, you hear what I'm talking about a little bit more. They got all of it. Otherwise, we were still a bit regionally fragmented in what it was that we got a piece of. And so now everybody was hearing what was going on for everybody else. And with Bout It, I'm telling you, Bout It came out and it was the one where you came to school and people were talking about it like a new movie had come out. Like, you heard about it? And all you could do was wait for it to come on the radio. There was nothing that you could do to accelerate the pace of getting it. But it was one where you heard and was like, oh, nothing was going to be the same for us after this one came out.
Yeah, Master P is whack to me, bro. So
Yeah.
Bad About It was huge, and it even, I'm not going to say it like dominated New York, but people in New York were listening to it, and the beat was undeniable. I've never gotten over Master P's just inability to rap, man. It never clicked for me because he couldn't rap and he was running around looking funny in the videos, doing the high knees to the chest. But and taking nothing away from that movement in the moment was huge. And he was a guerrilla marketer. And that was in many ways, there's a through line from him, from Puffy to him in terms of just like brilliant guerrilla marketing, and incredibly, mediocre lyrics, right? And
Well, he created the idea that it's all good if it sells, right?
yeah,
Like he created the idea that you could be the MC just on the basis of not only are we selling a lot of records, but I am the mastermind of selling the records. Basically, he flipped it as, yeah, you a rapper, but you would work for me,
yeah,
which hit us all in the, ooh,
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't want to be on the wrong side of the profit equation.
yeah. And he tapped into tribalism, and I actually think that there are some things about tribalism that can be triumphant. That was a region that was totally overlooked, and suddenly here we are in the middle of the spotlight. And there's something good about that. And then there are other things and other groups that emerge from out that momentum, and that's great. But something that you said about Mystical makes me think of a friend of mine. He divides things into like skills eras, styles eras, and vibes eras. And there are some MCs who are style MCs, and Mystical was a weird one because he's a style and skills MC. Devin Adu would be someone who's like a styles era MC and a vibes era MC. I'm not saying he's not skilled because he's stone cold brilliant to me, but it's like the vibe and the style of it is what hits. And so I think that was what was so interesting about Mystical for me. It's like, yo, this is there are very few people on his level in terms of being a styles MC. And yet he was also a skilled MC.
And you put all that together, like that idea you just put out there, and then put that to the Goody Mob, which is like the most unique group that anybody has thrown out here. Because Gip's my guy. Like CeeLo obviously ascended to stratospheric heights that none of us ever thought that we could
No.
see. Gip had this crazy cool thing that was going. And with Cujo, who was just like, so you want to fight? Anytime. We could do this if you'd like to. Timo with the energy. But like that cell therapy video and just the track, the hook, all of it was like, this was, to me, that was actually a fairly regionally inspecific record to me. Like it was Southern, it was obvious they were Southern, but the vibes did not speak to me to one place or another.
I was in the South at that time, and I have to say I was totally overwhelmed by the culture and charmed by it. I mean, this was the era when everybody, at least in North Carolina, was going, "There it is, daddy," and raising the roof every other second. And there was something that totally fit when that record came out that hit for me because of where I was, where I felt like this is capturing a region in a way that people need to pay attention to. I'm not going to pretend that everyone I took the records back to paid attention to them. Right? But I mean, I think, again, history has vindicated, in the present vindicated how dope Goody Mob was, how dope Outkast was. But history has vindicated them as like sort of once in a generation groups, right? I mean, I look back on them. I was playing those records, the Goody Mob record that we're talking about, and that made me go back to the first Outkast record. And I got chills, man. I mean, this is some of the best music I ever heard.
I love the era also in that we discuss music in a different way, because flattening was a term that you used earlier that I think was important, because I think the internet and the need for constant discourse has flattened out a lot of stuff, and there's not nearly as much variance. I feel, at least it doesn't feel like, in the public expression of opinions of different records. And so I talked about before, everybody could kind of have their record or whatever. I'm going to run through some records that we have not talked about here, and we don't have to stop on all of them or any of them necessarily, but just to give people an understanding of the volume, and for those of us who were there, a recollection of what the volume was. I'm going to talk about these records, and sometimes I'm just bringing them up because of a single or a video that just cut through and lasted. So we have not talked yet about The Roots' Do You Want More, which is a banger, right? And nothing had sounded like that because it was a band. We hadn't had a rap band, and they made this jazz rap album. And that's the coolest incarnation of Black Thought that we've ever had. Even if you think there were better rapping versions, coolest incarnation. Too Short Cocktails came out that year. DJ Quick's Safe and Sound comes out that year. The Alcoholics Coast to Coast. E40 in a Major Way comes out in 1995. We already got to the Master A sitting on Chrome, which we got to a little bit. Naughty by Nature, Poverty's Paradise. Not a great record, but gave us our annual Naughty by Nature Summer Jam with Feel Me Flow. They figured the summer out better than anybody else had. Grand Poobah 2000, which a touch disappointing because Poobah, that's a rapping ass motherfucker that we just forget was that guy.
I Like It is still a single that every time it comes on, people who even if they haven't heard it before, they love it. It hits at parties still to this day. That's a great single. But yeah, disappointing album. But yeah, Puba, we're talking about some people at the tail end of their runs for me. Like Too Short's album right before that is my favorite Too Short album.
Yeah.
Right. This one is okay, but the one before that,
Right. Hold on. Mac 10's record with Faux Life on it.
Mac 10 jumping off the roof.
That's right. With the smile. Running off the roof. He did not jump off the roof. He ran off the roof and ordered McDonald's as he was on the getaway from robbing these people. Skee-Lo, I Wish, which gave us an all-time great video that is hilarious too. That's the most self-deprecating video anybody has ever done. The song, that's what it is. But it didn't matter because the video was perfect.
Well, the Mac 10 running off the roof too is a good segue to, it's like that. Should I jump off the roof? Psych, because I wouldn't be living proof. Group Home, one of the worst, best albums in history, and clear-cut proof that what DJ Premier valued was unique voices.
And he says it out loud, right? He doesn't even lie about it. He says it out loud. The Junior Mafia record came out that gave us not one, but two classic singles and a classic single that had a classic remix. Big, hey, man, that's the Homeboy Hall of Fame move right there, is Biggie Smalls being like, hey, man, I'm going to write y'all an album so y'all can get some paper.
And the remix jumps off a beef with Boot Camp Clip, which ends up in a beatdown for, I believe, the OGC rappers. I think Sterang Wonder specifically in D&D Studio, maybe. So a lot of weird history there.
And the most callous Biggie line of all, that's okay, she was old anyway. Yep. Like, how do you just keep rapping after you have said this? That third Nas Effects album, Hold It Down. And I don't know how well you remember that one, but I loved that one.
I remember it well. It had the Mobb Deep remix to it. It had some Easy Mo B beats. It had a whole lot of producers on there I liked. And it was good for them to bounce back from the second album, which I think was very disappointing for people.
Yes, I would agree with that. WC in the Mass, Cool G Rap 456, WC in the Mass, Circle Curb Serving, AZ Do or Die, where we always wanted it for AZ. It never quite made it over because, he jumps on the scene with Life's a Bitch, and we're just like, oh. Like, he's kind of like the original Cannabis, except Do or Die was way better than the Cannabis album.
Well, speaking of Cannabis, you got Mr. Smith.
You do? Oh, yeah, we're getting there. He dropped this year. KRS-One dropped the self-titled KRS-One album, which is okay. I think I skipped over the Loonies drop Operation Stackola, and I got 5 on it.
Yeah.
And immediate. So there was a measure of controversy, though, with that single because the sample was so simple, right? It felt like a bit of a loop. They were rapping their asses off over it, but there was a purist backlash to that song that clearly has stood up 30 years later. Onyx, All We Got Is Us. Them little dudes is this tall and bald-headed and thugging, but they always brought it, man.
The former barbers who used to dance to house music. And I remember when Charlemagne was interviewing Fredro, and he said, so you used to dance? He said, I used to dance on niggas' foreheads. He stays in character. Last Days was a classic record off there. Most people loved that one. And Channel Live came out that year, and I bring that up because Mad-ism is one of the times that KRS still sounded like BDP KRS. He was so raw on that record. Every verse on Mad-ism from him is just incredible.
Like, that's a record that mattered a lot to me at the time, that it wasn't until we were going back. I was like, oh yeah, that one. Cypress Hill, Temples of Boom. Because Cypress Hill is a wild group to look back on the arc of their career. Because their first album, all-time classic. And then we looked up and somehow they were white boys' favorite rap group.
Yeah.
And none of us saw that coming ever.
Yeah. It was weird for me because they were one of the first non-black groups that I saw hardcore hood dudes listening to that first album like it was the best album out, right? And then I went off and got a scholarship to prep school, and those kids were listening to the second album, Black Sunday, and I'm like, whoa, this is a real switch in fan base here. They turned into Willie Nelson or something real quick. So that was off-putting for me, and I got very confused by Cypress Hill. But the
Dog Pound, Dog Food.
I think in real time, a lot of people were disappointed by it. And history again has vindicated it. People love that album. They go back to all of those like Chronic and Doggy Style era
Right.
albums. And that's the one that like the music aficionados I know, they're like, actually the sound of this one is the best.
It's the Dre mix, right? It's, it's Daz beats. It's very similar to like Doggy Style notion, right? Like Daz had some beats and Dr. Dre was like, hey, let me show you how to produce, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me show you how you actually put all this stuff together.
Yeah.
8Ball and MJG on Top of the World. We got to that one. The Far Side Lab Cabin, California is an interesting one because I looked it up. These are the first Dilla singles. The first J Dilla single, back when he was JD, but his first single was Running. He did 4 tracks on that record, and 3 of them were probably of the 4 best tracks on there. He did Bullshit, he did Why, he did Running, and he did Drop.
Did he do She Said as well, or just the She Said remix?
Yes.
Because that's a banger too. And on that Alcoholics album, you get a lot of people's first glimpse at Madlib.
Yes.
Who come to dominate, for another 20 years after that, right? So yeah, there are a lot of people who are making their debuts. And let's not forget, this is an obscure one for a lot of people, but Showbiz and AG dropped this album, Goodfellas. The reason I bring it up is because they had that one DJ Premier produced single, the nighttime remix of Next Level.
That's right.
And that's one that it ends up in 8 Mile with Eminem rapping over it. And it's just been one of those beats that people have been freestyling over now for 30 years.
Yeah. And you mentioned before LL Cool J, Mr. Smith, Don't Call It a Comeback Part 2, except that's when LL just gave up on the fellas. Right? Like, and it's funny because what happened was he did Mama Said Knock You Out. We were like, welcome back, LL. He tried gangster rap with 14 shots to the dome. We was like, hey, chill out. And he was like, you know what? Fuck y'all.
Yeah.
I'm rapping for them for the rest of time.
And 2 of those are near perfect pop rap songs, man. Doing it. And what's the album? Who Do You Love? Lounging.
Lounging, yeah.
Those are incredible. Hey Lover, He Lost Me a Little. Was that the one where he's tonguing it down with vanilla ice cream? That wasn't working for me. But also, I love that sample. It's just that when they did the Cooley High Paradise remix for Camp Low, they flipped that Michael Jackson sample better. So I held that against him.
Yes. Also, some singles that came out that year. I pointed out because it's important, not because it's dope, but Gangsta's Paradise for Coolio had 1995 in a chokehold. It was everywhere. Argument for the greatest rap single of all time is the One More Chance Stay With Me remix Biggie Smalls, which comes out in 95. Like it's up there. It was everywhere.
Yeah. Well, now refresh my memory, was How High out in 95? Was that when that?
Yes, because I believe the show soundtrack comes out that year. So How High did come out.
That was an all-time single as well.
Yes, How High came out. Also all-time single. The All I Need remix from Meth came out that year. We got to the Junior Mafia joints, First of the Month, Bone Thugs and Harmony. We got to that. Yeah, like this is not the year that we're doing the series on, right? Yeah. We were able to kind of run through this year in one episode. The year for the series is coming 1996. So how much of a banger did 96 have to be for you youngsters? It was a thing, man. We got the 96 draft and 96 in rap in the same year.
Can I throw out 2 underrated joints from that year?
Oh, yeah.
Mike Geronimo, The Natural, had like 5 songs on there and remixes that I thought were dope. And there's a group out of LA called The Nonce that has an album called World Unlimited, I think. It's a vibes album. You put it on and you smoke and you chill. And I don't think anybody was really listening to it back then, but I still listen to it now.
Oh, I'm going to throw one last album that came out in 1995, a name that I'm sure you have not thought of in 30 years. Brother Lynch Hung dropped a record. Because there was a horror or a different kind of edgelord rap era that comes around, right? Like the Gravediggers, I think, come in 97 with their version of it. The Ghetto Boys were definitely giving you some of this. But yeah, that was Brother Lynch Hung was definitely giving you that.
I think he's the one who has that viral video of him and a whole bunch of people freestyling. If you ever look it up, one of the weirdest freestyle videos, you'll ever hear that and Kool Keith freestyling with the Alcoholics and Exhibit. Some of the funny, he thought Exhibit's name was Everlast. These are 2 of the funniest rap videos you'll ever see in your life. Look them up.
Brother Lynch was at a time where he became a representative for they own some crazy shit, right? Like people ain't never heard a Brother Lynch record once in their lives because that wasn't the point. If somebody made a reference to Brother Lynch, you knew what that meant. Like Gangsta Nip from Houston was also on that same kick. Like, yo, man, it was just, I don't know why. Maybe I'm just getting old, but even just throwing out some of these random names just kind of makes me.
There's another guy I think he's from Houston, who comes out that year as well. And it's a guy I never really listened to heavy, but people will drop him. Scarface will drop his name here. K Rhino came out in 95 as well. Count Bass D's debut was in 1995. Weird album. He got dropped from his major almost immediately. But he's a guy who ended up being something on the underground scene going forward. There were so many interesting albums in that year. And that Far Side album, that marks two albums that were like comets in hip hop, because all of a sudden they didn't matter anymore. They broke up. They didn't matter. Fat Lip is smoking crack. Their producer, Jay Swift, is smoking crack. And you never really hear from them again. But they had this period where these two albums were two of the coolest artsy albums that ever came out in rap history.
Yep. And Slim Kid Trey on the list of famous people who tried to holler at my girl.
Whoa.
It seemed to work out okay for me, but on the list, because here was the problem for him. She just knew him. He was on The Real World very briefly.
I remember
dating a woman. I think it was Real World Chicago. I can't remember which Real World, but he was dating a woman there, and that's how she knew him. And I mean, trying to holler at that white woman, then trying to holler at her was not. Yeah, that was not going to work. She did not think of him as there comes a time in every man's life. No. My dear. She wasn't. That wasn't what she saw.
She told him there's other fish in the sea.
Yes, that is it. But hey, that's my man, Jason England. Google him, check him out. He did a piece on American fiction in 2024. That's one of the best pieces of cultural criticism you're going to find. Also, a more recent one on
One Battle After
Another. Right? You can check those out at Defector. My brother, I appreciate you joining us for this, man.
Always, man. It was a pleasure.
All right, man. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on The Right Time. Remember, the series on 1996 is coming in 2026. Check us out. My man Ryan Brumley handling everything behind the scenes. Thank you, sir. Remember, follow The Right Time. Subscribe, like, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars. I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. And we'll talk to you guys in a couple of days. Take it easy.